Here are the top 5 reasons why now is one of the best times to buy a home here in the Greenville, South Carolina market. One of the biggest questions that we get, especially from prospective buyers, is now a good time to buy a home? In general, this is really just like if you started the journey and you've already kind of got an idea, but you're unsure whether or not to jump in or wait. I honestly think that I really wanted to kind of break down what I saw as the 5 big reasons why this summer has really offered the best opportunity that we've seen in years for buyers in our market. So, whether you're upsizing, downsizing, relocating, could be a brand new home, whatever it is that you're looking for. I really think that I hope this brings some value and helps to bring maybe some clarity into where it is. So let's dive in. Reason number 1, what I look at is the inventory is up. And I mean, we're talking way up compared to last year, compared to years past. This summer we saw a tremendous amount of inventory hit the market. Areas like Simpsonville, Taylor's, Greer, we were seeing and still seeing 25 to 40% more listings on the market compared to just a few months ago. And what I feel like why this brings opportunity for buyers is you've got a lot more options, in front of you than you did, say, 3, 4, 5 years ago. The idea that you can evaluate different properties, that you may like a floor plan, but you can look at a different location. You can evaluate in so many different ways in terms of like what the difference is and weigh the pros and cons. We are seeing that interest rates have definitely put buyers on the sidelines. I mean, they're concerned that interest rates are too high, prices are too high. So when you've got buyers that are a kind of a softened buyer market, there's not a lot of competition when you're evaluating homes, giving you a much better position when it comes down to negotiation, as well as, less competition means that there's far less in terms of bidding wars on properties. Not to say that it's not happening, but that it's not happening with the same amount of frequency that it was happening, say, in 2021, 2022. So, sellers are having to be strategic in terms of how they're pricing, what they're doing in order to be able to attract the buyers that are out there. So they have to be more strategic and not just hopeful that if they put their house on the market, somebody will buy it. And I think that creates a huge amount of opportunity for buyers. So what I would say is use this opportunity to explore and look at different homes, different floor plans, different areas, compare the value, benefits, all of those things. And at that point, start to kind of sharpen up the confidence in regards to how you would negotiate, because I think that instead of looking at it as kind of chasing the market, buyers in an opportunity to at least have some leadership within it. Reason number 2, homes are taking longer to sell. So, we're seeing time on market is the longer it takes for a home to sell, sellers start to get a little bit frustrated, or they're unsure, maybe it's not their market, those kinds of things. Sometimes I'll talk to buyers and they're like, well, that house, there must be something wrong with that house because it's been on the market for 100 days. Well, rarely is it that there's really anything wrong with the house. There could be something wrong with the pricing or the strategy around it. But the idea that they kind of ignore it because it feels like it's been on there too long. If nobody else wants it, why would I want it? And I think that time on market is one of the most overlooked tools that buyers can use when it comes down to being able to get the best price and the best terms when they're looking to buy the house. And in this market, homes were selling. Seems like as soon as you put a sign in the yard, it was selling back in 2020, 21, even into 22. The idea was now we're in a market where it could take 3, 5, sometimes 8 weeks or more. And what that means is that, at that point, sellers have been on the market for a longer time. We were at 28 days back in 2021, and we're last I checked, we're 58 or 60 days right now. So we've doubled our days on market since the height of the COVID COVID craziness. And so at that point, 60 days on market doesn't sound like a long time, but if you're having to keep it prepared, get ready for showings, you're constantly on these pins and needles kind of thing. And basically as a, to help to show and sell your house, sellers become a lot more open to negotiation, in order to end that kind of what I would consider an intrusion, right? The idea that now at least I'd rather just get rid of it, and then at that point, like consider a fair offer, and move forward. The other is buyers back in 2021 weren't able to, like, it was hard to get offers approved if you had any contingency whatsoever, when that homeowner, that seller, was getting 10 different offers and they were just evaluating whatever the best terms were. You saw buyers stripping away things like inspections, appraisals, finance contingencies, home selling contingencies, all of these different things in order to get the seller to accept their home, because there just wasn't any inventory out there. And now sellers are a little more open. I would say probably far more open than they were like 3 years ago. They're willing to accept contracts with some of these terms, and then at that point willing to take on a little bit of risk in the hopes that they can get the home sold. So buyers are not having to waive protections in order for sellers to look at and potentially accept their offers. So, we work with a buyer that bought a home here in Simpsonville not too long ago. Basically we came in and we were able to write an offer that included, $6,000 in closing costs, as well as when we got through the inspection scenario, there was probably 17 or 18 different things that popped up that were kind of a concern to my buyer and myself. And we were able to negotiate with that seller, to get 13 of the biggest things done out of the 18, and that we are comfortable with the rest of the terms. But, had that been 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we may not have been able to win that. And honestly, the only reason why we did is because they'd been sitting on the market for over 60 days. So they were ready to go. So in short, time equals leverage. Reason number 3, price drops, price reductions, price improvements, whatever you're calling. We're seeing a lot more of those right now. And so, when I looked at MLS this morning, I think there was 120 different price reductions that had happened on listings that were currently active. And as we go back and evaluate and see, I think it was somewhere right around 1 in 3 listings in Greenville MLS last month. There was a price reduction that was occurring or had occurred. So, what it is a lot of times sellers were starting too high, maybe in the spring. The idea that they could negotiate, they could price some padding in there. So buyers would come in, make offers, they could negotiate with the buyers. Reality was, I think what a lot of sellers are finding out, and what we've been kind of advising our sellers on, is that it's not the market to add, padding or wiggle room into a price if you're actually wanting to sell the property. And so, but at the same point, if you're insistent upon it, sometimes they're sitting out there, they're not getting offers, they're not getting showings. And so at that point, they're having to do a price reduction, and they've just kind of wasted their days on market. But what's great for the buyer is they're not paying peak season premiums. So they're getting, the prices are coming down a little bit. They're able to get, a better deal on still a great house, but it's one of those, they've got a little bit of wiggle room that came down back in their favor. The other is, I find that, sometimes you're looking for a property. A lot of times, if it wasn't for that price reduction, I may never have seen it, because it wouldn't have popped into whatever search I was using, whether it's Zillow from our site, various other sites in terms of, how you're finding properties. Price drops are a great way for sellers to be able to move into a different buyer pool. And so I think, a lot of times buyers are, they're motivated to go out and look at, make an offer for, because it may not be new to the market, but it's new to them in terms of when they've seen it. So I think it opens up a great door there. The other is that you can start to kind of evaluate, what's the true motivation of the seller? If they've been on the market for 100 days and they haven't changed their price, maybe they're not realistic in their price point. However, if you start to see where they've made price adjustments over, a certain level of time, they might be more interested in to be able to take an offer even less than what they've adjusted that price to. So I think it opens up. So my advice is just be patient, track price changes on homes that you're interested in, that you like, and ultimately at that point, timing can a lot of times work in your favor. Reason number 4. Builders, new home construction builders, are getting far more, they're getting resale market, the resale homes sitting on the market a little bit longer. buyer activity that's softening or has softened over time. New construction builders are really kind of like having to step up their game, and here in the Greenville area, especially say Fountain Inn, Greer, Simpsonville, and Piedmont, what we're seeing is that there's an increase in the available inventory of move-in ready homes. That we're seeing builders offering paid closing costs. They're doing interest rate buy downs. They're offering things like, upgrades like appliance packages, blinds, maybe there's some landscaping. Potentially they're going to do other interior upgrades that they may not have done in the past. And the other is like they're a little bit more flexible in their closing timelines, as well as like what that deposit. So a lot of times builders will have you put down kind of either a non-refundable deposit or those kinds of things that they're a little bit more negotiable in terms of like what they demand from you in terms of like to get the ball rolling. So, we work with, my sister just bought a house back in February out in Woodruff. It was, her first home. She was a little bit nervous going into it. We ended up finding a really great property. It was a new construction home. And as part of our negotiation, we were able to get a little over $22,000 in closing cost. She was also able to get a few different updates or upgrades within the property itself, including appliances, countertops, and there was some other lighting things that they did. So, on top of the $22,000 that she got. So really she ended up walking in there and not having to pay anything in terms of closing. And she ended up walking with a great house and a budget that made a lot of sense for her. So I think it's a great opportunity. Reason number 5, home sellers are offering more incentives than they have in the past. Like they're willing to throw in things to sweeten the deal. Not all of them, but you're seeing a larger percentage of home sellers that are willing to do things they weren't willing to do in the past, i.e., they're offering, help and incentives in closing costs. They're working out different things where those closing costs could potentially work as a rate buy down for that buyer to be able to, help to minimize the impact of higher interest rates over the next 12 months, 24 months, whatever they're trying to do. They're throwing in things like appliances that may not have been traditionally included with a home. Or they're willing to do like seller, basically like a credit towards repairs, updates, upgrades, things like that in order to try to sweeten the deal for the seller or for the buyer, sorry. So it's one of those like, as all of these things kind of come along, I think it's a great opportunity from a buyer's perspective that you don't know what you don't know unless you ask. More sellers are becoming much more open to the idea of whatever we need to do within reason to make this deal work, that they're willing to work with. So will this window last forever? Well, the answer is no. But I can't tell you when it's going to end. I can't tell you if it's going to be 6 months, 2 months. It could be 2 weeks. Interest rates could drop tomorrow, and then all of a sudden we've got a floodgate of things. But what I will tell you is it really is about that. The market is the market is the market is the market. Whether you're buying today, whether you're buying a year from now, 2 years from now, there's always going to be challenges in this market, and there's always going to be uncertainty and nervousness. But the reality is, like, it really boils down to making sure that you've got everything that you need and that you're making a decision that makes sense to you, it fits into your life from a personal, financial, all of the things that go along. So the reality is, understand too, when you're going out and you're looking at properties and you're able to, and you're using some of these tactics to hopefully get some really great value out of the market, understand that, the old adage, you marry the house, date the rate, okay? You're going to be building equity while others sit on the sidelines. And I can tell you, we've seen, even in these last 2 years, which have been incredibly difficult for some in terms of affordability, we've seen 7% interest rates. It has definitely been a different market, but that even through all of these challenges, we're still seeing somewhere in and around 2% each year over the last 2 years. So the idea of like, and if interest rates were to drop or prices were to go up, the idea is that at the end of it, you as a homeowner now benefit from the equity stake that you've put into your property. And the other is that you have a level of control in this market right now that is probably bigger than what we have seen for buyers in the last 4 years or so. So the idea that you have control now to kind of dictate some of the terms, or at least be able to negotiate some of the terms. But come fall, come spring, who knows what the next 3, 6, 12 months is going to look like? Will that opportunity be there? Who knows? The idea is like, I personally am a believer that home ownership's amazing. And so at that point, like, it's just being able to make sure that it's going to match where you are. And so it's timing it correctly, but that understanding there are huge benefits to it. So anyway, if you're thinking about the idea of beginning the journey of like purchasing a home, whether you're looking to upsize, downsize, relocate, this is the first time home, whatever it is, and you're just confused, like, hey, where do I get started? What's going on? I mean, I know this is not something that people do on an everyday basis. So generally we understand where we're going, but who do we talk to first? How do we set ourselves up and those things? And you're curious to know more about how that works. I would love to be able to have a conversation. Feel free to drop a comment below. We will answer any of the questions that are in there. Feel free, please. We would love it if you could like and subscribe to this channel, because we will plan to be doing these kinds of videos on a weekly basis. The other is reach out if you want to get started. If you're confused or just curious to know, or need a contact, whether it's a lender, whether it's an inspector, whether it's this, if you need some help in terms of like building that team around you in order your journey as successful as possible, we would love to be a part of that conversation. So just basically what I look at is like the 5 things that were like that stand out to me on why this is such a great market for buyers. And I hope it was helpful for you, and look forward to talking to you guys soon.